My name is Michael Goodfriend, and I'm the executive producer of the Play On podcasts. My guest today is an acclaimed poet, playwright, screenwriter, whom the New Yorker describes as the heir to Garcia Lorca, Pirandello, and Tennessee Williams. On TV, he's written for The Exorcist, for Fox, Z, The Beginning of Everything for Amazon, Mindhunter, and Tales of the City for Netflix, and The Chi for Showtime. He's currently developing shows at OWN and Hulu, as well as working on films for HBO and Fox Searchlight. And he also translated Shakespeare's King Lear into modern English verse for Play On Shakespeare, which has been produced as a podcast series by Next Chapter Podcasts. This is part 2 of my interview with Marcus Gardley. When did you actually start to make money writing?
Oh, that's a great question. When did I actually start making money? I think my first production would have been the first time I actually got a check. But it was so low. You know what I mean? They went straight to rent. Yeah, it was my first play. I got a check. Then about 5 years after that, I did a major production, and then I got a crazy amount of money. It was really crazy, really, really crazy. That and that was so satisfying because you're told you're going to be a starving artist. I had just accepted that was my plight in life. I was just going to always be struggling to pay rent, and the idea that my work was going to I was going to live off doing what I love to be. That's why I always say, and I know everybody knows this, but you have to do what you love. You have to do what you love because your gift will make room for you. Everything that I own, I'm in my house now, and I'm in a very big house, and I'm very, very happy. But I can literally chart everything that I own back to my writing. And that makes me, even if they took all of the money away today, I would die a happy person because, my talent and I don't own it. It's just, I'm blessed to have it. I'm very grateful to have it.
Do you still go to church?
I haven't gone to church because of the pandemic. So I haven't been to church in 2 years just because, they haven't really been opening the churches. So I haven't been to church, but my church, I that term means a lot of things to me. So I always consider my church, the people I make theater with is my church. Working on this podcast, people I make this podcast with, that's my church. I also mentor 20, I know it sounds crazy, but I mentor about 20 people because I've always felt like being a teacher is my calling. So that's also my church, right? And then my friends who are always there for me, who, when I'm struggling with something and they provide an ear, that's my church. Doing service for people who are in need, that's my church. I supervise people at my day job at Amazon, and all those people I work with is my church, because it's my connection is about being in service for people, also humbling myself and letting other people be in service of me. That's the really value of church, right? And just really making things, people forget that about church, but the real value of church in the traditional sense is you make things, you are singing together, you are worshiping together. All of those things is a form of art that you all are making together.
You mentioned your day job at Amazon. Can you describe what that day job is?
Yes. So I was blessed to have the opportunity to have what is called a overall deal. And what that means is they pay you a significant amount of money to just work at a particular studio. So for 2 years, I have a 2-year contract. And for 2 years, I will do 3 things. One, I supervise a TV show. I can't tell you what they are because of contract, but I can tell you what I do. So I supervise a show. So it's another writer is the lead writer on that show. But that writer is a first-time writer. And so I've just completed my 12th season of TV. So what I do is I supervise this writer, helping this writer with their pilot and getting their work into the best it can be. And hopefully that show will be made. So that's one thing I do. And the second thing that I do is I develop my own show, which is an idea that I have from scratch that, I work on the pilot. I pitch ideas about the show to the executives at the network. And we do that for a while until, they decide they're going to make the show and air the show or not. And then the third thing that I do, which the most common thing, is you work on an IP. So IP stands for intellectual property, and it's usually a TV show based on a book or a short story or an article, primarily a novel. And so they send me. I think I've been at Amazon a year, so they send me books, and then I find the one that I want to adapt into a TV show, and and then we make that show. So that's what I'm doing now.
So when you find the one you want to adapt into a TV show, then you go to the people that that you've worked with, that you'd like to collaborate with, and basically say, hey, can you take a crack at this, or can we work on this together?
No, so it's really just I take the crack. So
it's all in your hands.
Yeah, it's all in my hands. So I am the lead, if you will, on it, what they call a showrunner. And so TV is really interesting because it's a lot like theater in that the playwright is the writer. The showrunner tends to be the writer. Sometimes you'll have a rare case where the director is a showrunner, but usually 9 times out of 10, the showrunner is the writer. And so you write the pilot, you do passes through all the scripts, you hire the actors, you hire the directors, you hire all the other writers. And it's in that way, it's sort of like writer driven.
It sounds like utopia for a writer. Like you can have complete creative control.
Well, you don't have to see this. Now, I'm so glad you said that. So this is the difference. You don't have complete creative control. So in playwriting, you write the play and everybody has to ask you for change. Can I say this here? But the playwright, the buck starts with the playwright. In TV, it kind of starts with you, but not really. The executives have a lot of power. And so you really want to sort of like work with them to come to a compromise when you don't agree on something.
And you're not exclusive with Amazon, right?
Yes.
Because you're working on films, you're doing independent films, you're doing you're working right now on the adaptation. The film version of the Color Purple musical, correct?
Thank you for this question. So I have an overall deal at Amazon just for television. So that means if I develop or work on a television show, it can only be at Amazon unless I've done this thing where they call, you can cut something out. So when I'm negotiating my contract with Amazon, if I have 2 other TV shows I'm working on over here, I can cut that out in the deal. And so they said, well, you are exclusive to Amazon except for these 2. But it's just TV. So film, I can go anywhere. I can do, several film projects. And that's why I'm able to do the film projects because they're not TV based. So that's the Color Purple, which, like I said, will come out this December, and then the Marvin Gaye, which will come out next. That'll be in the 23, and then doing several other independent. Like it was just announced, I'm doing this Boys to Men movie. Some of them are independent. I love features. It's all a different muscle, right? So features is great because as a playwright, I think I drive people crazy because my stuff is so visually oriented. But in film, that's what they want, and so I get to really exercise that muscle. And then in TV, it's a balance between the visual and the dialogue. And then theater is just, my dialogue part of myself. So I just love having that balance.
And how do you feel about The Color Purple, the musical, this film? How's it shaping up for you?
I'm so proud of it. I literally just before I got on to, I just turned in my final draft. It's going to be so beautiful, and they let me, working with that team has been incredible because they let me put my voice. Sometimes just like when you get on a project, this is what we want. They're not really interested in your take, but they kind of let me do my thing. I'm heavily visual, but I think Alice Walker really wanted a poet. And so, it was exciting to really, play with that language and dance with that language. Of that, both of the book and the previous movie and also the musical. So it's been an honor. It's just been a really honor working on that book. It is my favorite book of all time. And I forget when I was 16, I read it. And then I literally read it in one setting and then literally read it again. I couldn't believe a book could do that. But speaking of, just to come full circle, spirituality. And in that book, and, the first line is Dear God, because the central character is writing these letters to God. And so this was so brilliant about that book. Dear God means God is in like my dear friend. So dear God in that sense. And then there is Dear God, as in, God above and all of that thing. But there's also Dear God is God is her friend, because she's writing letters to God. So she's managed to make God big and God intimate. It's just incredible. And then all of these things, she's writing to God because who else is going to hear her, and then what's beautiful about that book, and now the book belongs to the world. So really just like, I geek out on that book because it's a masterpiece, and it has all these iterations. It started out obviously the book, and then there's obviously the masterpiece film, and then the musical, and now it's a musical film. It has all these different iterations. It's become, every generation has their own version of it. And so to be part of that legacy is one of the greatest honors of my life.
Did you go out and see the film right away when it came out, the Spielberg film?
No, you know what? When it first came out, my parents forbade us to watch it. And, it's interesting because in the African American community, the response it was mixed.
I remember that, yeah.
It was mixed because I think it hit home too hard in a really great way. And now it's so beloved that you can't talk bad about it. Like the people will hurt you. You know what I mean? And so even
really?
when I
got your family forbade you to see it because
of the content, because of they felt like it wasn't edifying, right? That some of the portrayals of the men especially was not edifying. Like there's nothing good could be came from it. It's a hard story to sit through. And some people felt like it was leaned too heavy one way in terms of the depiction of the men. But yet, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but yet it tapped into something so honest and so beautiful about humanity that you could not deny it. And it over time you saw just masses and masses of people embracing it. And for a lot of, scores and millions of people, it's their favorite movie. And we worked with the same team. The team that made that movie is the team that's making this movie. So
no
it's
kidding.
a huge honor. Yeah.
How far are you into the Marvin Gaye project?
So I finished the script on that. We saw that it got into a bidding war with I think 6 or 7 studios, and it was sold for quite a bit of money. So I've finished like maybe the 5th draft of that, and now we are in casting. But with all of these projects, it's been just, every time I think about it, my mind gets blown, because I believe the reason why they cast. So first of all, The Color Purple, they tell you when you get on that show that Alice Walker's ancestors chose you. Something real spiritual going on with that project. And they said, because I was like, thank you, I'm so honored. And they said, oh no, Alice Walker's ancestors chose you, and they don't play, and they're very intense. And then you work on that project, you think, okay, these people are little. And then you work on it, you're like, oh no, that was, because things happen to you that are not normal. And it's just an honor to be in that. But her ancestors are very powerful, and they, I'm honored to be depicted by them if that is the case. And then the same thing with the Marvin Gaye project. When I was hired, they said, you are the son of a preacher, and that's who he was. And we need that specificity in the script. And his widow told me, oh, I know why he chose you. Because, me and her would talk. She's an incredible person. And me and her would talk, every other weekend. And she believes that Marvin also is choosing people in the project. So much of his life is similar to my own, having a father who's a pastor, love for music, but also, sort of grappling with the world of the church and also the world as an artist, and how this often comes into conflict. And so I really just use my own things that I struggle with on a daily basis to really get into Marvin's bones as a character. And I'm very, very proud of the script. And I can't wait to share it with the world. It's going to be amazing.
How has the world of being an artist been a place of conflict for you with the world of the church? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the church that I grew up in, it's very conservative. Not conservative as in Republican, obviously, but conservative, and talks about traditions and they don't like for you to question a lot. And so, even as a kid, I know I annoyed people because to me, the beauty of religion is in the question. And I don't need it to be answered. And I think I was asking questions that could not be answered. And I think it frustrated people. And I didn't need the question answered. I just needed to know if there was an answer. That if you had said to me, we don't have an answer for that, I'd have went on to the next thing. But what I was getting was stop asking. And what I was getting is he's trouble. He keeps asking questions. And that I knew was not right. That nobody had to tell me. I just knew it in my stomach. I said, this is not right. And so I've been having a very complicated relationship because of that. And I had also a very complicated relationship with the church because there were men in the way of the church. Like there was a representative in the way of the church instead of it being about one person's faith and their personal relationship with God. There was always a man that told you what you were doing was good or bad. And so when you saw that man do something that was terrible, everything crumbled because that was the symbol. And I saw all these men do really terrible things to people. And that's what I was like, this can't be right. I mean, really terrible things, really like unimaginable terrible things to people. And everybody ignore it. And I said, oh no.
In the church itself, in the institution?
In the church itself, the leaders of the church, we saw them and everybody knew it. We saw them in our face do terrible things to people. And
so you saw miracles and you also saw evil.
We saw the people doing miracles do evil. That messes you up as a kid. That will mess you up because you don't know how to reason that. The brain can't, because you also are being told there's only good and evil. So when you see something that's not one of those two things, this is why binaries are the most dangerous things in the planet. Because when you're only told there's two options and all you see is the third, what do you do with that? You go crazy. And I've seen people go crazy trying to figure out, why do I keep seeing this third thing? Either you go crazy, you get out, or you just ignore it.
Or you become an artist. You become an artist and you can do both. You can have.
Yeah, exactly. You can talk about the third, right? You can talk about the gray area.
Is it a problem for your family in any way, your father or your siblings, the things you deal with in your writing? Has it caused any strife?
You know what? So, I love this. You asked such a great question. So I think they come to the plays and they're very smart. So they know what I'm doing, but they won't talk to me about it. So they come and they're very supportive and they find their ways through it. But I think if there's something in it that like, oh, he's doing that, that little kid that asks all those questions, they do what they did when I was a kid. So ignore him.
In other words, they told you not to ask questions. Now they don't ask questions.
No, exactly.
You wrote a play called Black Odyssey. Is it an adaptation of the Odyssey?
Yes. So it's, I as you probably can already tell, I'm obsessed with like the big stories. So me and my sister were always obsessed with Greek myth. We knew all the gods. We was just kind of our thing. And, when I got a commission from the Denver Theater Center and their mandate was write a play that's impossible to produce, which like I said, you found the right writer. So I was like, I just want to write a big play. And so I was grappling with like, how do I want to do this? And I knew I wanted to write about African-American history. And I said, I just want to cover it all. So I was like, well, I can't just do it because people will be lost. So what do people know? And I thought, well, the Odyssey is like it's sprawling in a way where people will go literally, both literally and emotionally, wherever it takes you, because that's the notion of what an Odyssey is. And so I knew that was the spine, that it would be the Odyssey, but the journey is one in African-American history. And so it's an adaptation in that all the characters from the Odyssey are in it, but they're also characters from African-American history. And so when you're watching the play, you're thinking, oh, this is great. I'm learning all these beautiful moments in African-American history. But the central character, you realize, has no family, that the character was adopted and never knew his family. And so these moments in the story are very much him learning his own personal history. And so the what I hope the play gives an audience is that you don't have to know the people from which you come to know the legacy and the rich cultural history that you come from, that actually has value as well.
You talked about sleep, and you've also talked about all your work. So when do you sleep?
Well, I have this. So what I'm realizing with my body. So the holidays just passed, so I didn't have to work. I had like 3 weeks off, and when that happens, my body naturally goes into its own rhythm. And for some reason, I don't know why, my body does not like to be woke when others are woke. So I literally will wake up at 11, be woke the entire night, and go to bed around 10, something like that. And then, wake up. Sometimes I wake up in the middle somewhere. But so that's my natural rhythm. I just think it's something about the quiet, the utter quiet, is that you can really listen. So there's that. And then because of that, I'm still actually, believe it or not, on that pattern. I haven't been able to break it. I haven't been sleeping because I have to be woke, like to do interviews, important interviews like this. And, people are not going to be like, yeah, I'll get up at 4 a.m. and try it. I mean, so I just haven't been sleeping like I want to, but I'll get it. It'll all go back to normal.
I'd wake up at 4 a.m. for an interview with you. So what is next? What's on the horizon for you? What's your next? Do you have a dream project? Do you have a project that you have to do? I'm sure you do have many that you have to do. What's really calling to you?
Everything I'm doing is a dream project. Translating this Lear was a dream project. Being able to, have this podcast and share with the world is a dream project. Having it placed in the Bay Area is a dream. I just signed on to do this movie about James Baldwin, and that's been a major dream of mine. So when I told you earlier about, studying, being a French major and going to Paris, that was all because of James Baldwin. James Baldwin did that. He obviously, upon the death of his father, he moved to Paris and lived there a long time. I think about 11 years. But and there's never been really a movie about him. And so I had just the fortune of being able to get this job where I'm writing a film about him, and that really is tapped into a lot of my dreams and the my passions. So I'm excited about that.
You're in the midst of writing this now, or you're in the research phase?
Research phase. Yeah. And it's going to be about this. So James Baldwin has this really famous debate with William F. Buckley. This debate they did in Cambridge, and so that's the penultimate scene in the movie. But up until then, it's about him and him rising to fame as a political figure.
And what is it? You said that the Lear project was a dream for you. Is there, if you could define what you want people to take away with them after listening to these podcasts or seeing a production, what would that be?
What's beautiful about Shakespeare is there is so many ways to enjoy his artistry. And one of the ways is because the poetry is so active, the language is so active, that what's great about a Shakespeare text as a podcast is you can literally give your brain candy by just sitting down, listening to these characters grapple with, huge ideas, make huge themes, life-changing moments. That you can literally sit down, relax in the world that we live with, where people really are aching for peace of mind, peace from worry, that these podcasts are actually great medicine for audiences to just really break from the worry of, the world. And then, so that's stage one. And then beyond that, because you're sitting down with this text and really learning things about Lear that you would have not had you seen the play or doing the normal thing of going to see the play or even seeing the movie version. Because you're sitting back with this language and allowing your brain to imagine. So you're having a very intimate relationship with Shakespeare text. you are now drawn in and learning things about the play that you have not thought before. So that's essentially stage one. And then stage two would be to actually now see the play and see how your experience has changed. Not if you had this intimate, completely oral experience. Now go see the play and see how you can have even a more richer experience now that you know more. And I think that's the big gift of this project, is that the podcast is not encouraging people not to see the Shakespeare, the plays. If anything, it's encouraging you to have a different way into the Shakespeare, so that when you see a play, you're coming to the experience, the play experience, equipped with more layers. And so that's my dream for the play and my dream for audiences and for the podcast.
Well, Marcus Gardley, if prophets are truth tellers, you're one of them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the incredible work you've done. We could talk about all of your other brilliant plays. I wish we could, but we do have to honor your time, because you need to sleep and you need to work, and we need you to keep telling stories and making brain candy for all of us to enjoy. I want to thank you so much on behalf of all of our listeners and all of the audience. Thank you for agreeing to do this interview and for all the truth that you shared with us. It's been a real honor and a privilege.
It's been my honor, truly, and thank you for your incredible questions.
You've been listening to the Play On Podcast bonus content series. You can learn more about the Play On Podcasts at Next Chapter Podcast's website, ncpodcasts.com. That's N as in next, C as in chapter, podcasts with an S at the end, .com, where you can find other Play On podcast series and interviews, along with talk podcasts like the 500, the 10, the Tough Juice podcast with Karan Butler, and a whole lot more. I'd like to thank Jeremiah Tittle, the founder of Next Chapter Podcasts, and my producer, Peter Musto. Our audio engineer is Adam Bernard, and our editor and sound designer is Justin Cortez. Be sure to subscribe to Next Chapter Podcast for updates on all the latest content, and don't forget to rate and review our shows. I'm Michael Goodfriend, and I look forward to sharing more incredible works and scripted fiction with you, along with lots of enlightening bonus content at Next Chapter Podcasts.